we go.
All right. Let's see. The time is 7:06. I now call the Newcastle Board of Selectmen meeting to order. The date is May 11th, 2020. We have several modifications to the agenda. I'm going to go over them in order. I've made notes. I'm just going to run through my list real quick, and if anybody has anything, I'll hit you up after I'm done. Let me know if I miss anything. Under 4.1, I broke it out into three different sections. 4.1A, town office remodel. 4.1B, network and phone system overhaul. 4.1C, community room renovation. That all falls under the heading of renovation projects for the town office buildings. I added 4.3 for the street vendor application we received. Let's see, I added 5.6, review road work plan to finish out this year. That's just expending the remainder of our reserve for road projects in the current budget year. It's not part of the FY21 budget discussion. So that's 5.6. I added 7.2, which is the fire warrant we received from Shelley. And that's actually all I have. I have one thing for executive session, but we'll get to that when we get there. So we do have both a personnel and a real estate executive session, portions of the executive session tonight. So I'm going to try and push the meeting along a little bit. I want to be able to have discussions about some of these things. Obviously, they're important, need to be discussed, and some decisions need to be made tonight. However, I recognize this is a large amount of discussion that may need to happen. So at some point when we get to it, maybe now actually, I'll recommend that we consider having a meeting on the 18th, a week from tonight at 7 o'clock to continue some of these discussions. And we may table them if we get into them and don't have enough time. But again, I don't want to be here until 10 o'clock tonight. And we do have some stuff that needs to be discussed in exec. So does anyone have any other modifications, changes, amendments to the agenda? All good? All right, so
yeah, I think anything I have we can talk about during the different things. So
okay, all right, it's all covered under the different things already on there.
I think so.
Great. Okay, all in favor of the amendment as amended? That passes 4-0. Also wanted to say our 5th selectman can't be with us tonight. Carolyn is home sick, so our best wishes go out to her. Hope you get better soon. So the minutes from March 23rd and April 6th, I want to start by saying very thorough minutes. Wonderful job. I will be completely honest before I ask for a motion to approve. I only made it through the March 23rd minutes. I didn't even make it to read the April 6th minutes. I don't know if anyone else was in the same boat as me, but I would take a motion independently on the minutes because I just didn't get to review the April 6th minutes, and we could maybe vote on those at the next meeting. Do we have a motion on any of the minutes?
Motion to table to next meeting.
Both of them?
Both of them.
Both of them.
And honestly, you have to say, I think they're too detailed.
They're getting, and I think it might be maybe a reaction to the method of meeting that we're having to have right now.
Could be.
And I can't fault, because I think that, honestly, it's probably great, but yes, in general, a little too detailed, a little too getting into the word by word, which don't want to knock Harriet. And Harriet, if you're listening, love everything you're doing.
Yes.
Don't stop, but we do need to.
She needs to do summary We've gone to
It's
this
more
before.
summary.
Yeah, more of a summary.
Yeah.
Less is more in a lot of these minutes.
So, motion to table the minutes until our next meeting. Any further discussion? Or do we have a second on the table?
I'll second.
Joel seconds. Any other discussion about tabling the minutes? All in favor of tabling the minutes till the next meeting? That passes 4-0. Thank you. And thank you, Harriet. All right, new business. We're going to dive right into it. 4.1, Town Office Operations Modification Project. We'll start by talking about that. I know I'm so tired. I apologize. I'm just exhausted today. We'll start off by talking about the town office remodel. John, I don't know if you want to kick it off here.
Yeah, so let me just try to, we talked at a prior meeting about what needs to be done, and of course, last time the idea was let's put off and have a little bit more in terms of concrete idea of what that actually means in terms of a concept and what you all are looking to accomplish. This is the first kind of stab in that direction. I don't think, I think this is, there's been time put into this, but I think we're all trying to, just make what the best step forward is, not knowing really what's coming next. So basically what, and I also would add, probably this looks probably a little bit more formal than I would have anticipated it. So thanks to the wonders of technology that Ben had at his fingertips. Probably if I was doing this, it would have been graph paper and pencil. But hey, nice to have something that looks very official. But there's been a lot discussed about how to make this building and this the office itself ready for opening. Been a lot of ideas. A lot of people have weighed in, staff, members of the public. But obviously I've talked with several of members of the board as well who've weighed in their 2 cents. But roughly what's put forward here on paper is what seems to pass muster with most of those folks, if not all of them. And the predominant need is to try to create a real strong physical barrier. Still having windows, still having the accessibility and visibility that the clerks need, that the residents need when they come in, so they know who they're working with, but also trying to create those barriers, those unfortunately necessary barriers that we're dealing with. So it's really twofold. The bulk of the work is really focused on modifications to the counter, and you've all seen the photos there. And then secondly, there's some changes to the offices on the the eastern side, might be the eastern side of the or northeastern side of the building, which are currently the CEO assessor area, the map area, and what was I guess in this case would be formerly the clerk's area. All three of those office areas will be modified to some degree, either because due to programming in terms of who's using those spaces, but predominantly also creating an area where members of the public can come in and still meet with folks, while we also find a way to focus the ability for residents to come in into a confined space. So that way, instead of cleaning the whole office every time someone comes in or something to that effect, we're really focusing on the areas where public's coming in. And then we're also going to have our regular protocols in terms of cleaning flat surfaces and so forth. But really trying to keep our meetings with the public in one spot so we can focus on those and focus on our needs there. So that's the first kind of blush of all this and where it goes. And I know Joel's worked out some numbers in terms of what the materials would be to do this, but in terms of programming and what we need the space to do. This is, you know, in terms of the office, this is what that might look like.
So, John, I have one concern when I looked at the plans, the sliding windows
Yeah.
for the clerks. How does that protect them when they open that sliding window? You know, wouldn't it make more sense to
So-
have a space underneath that they could slide like checks and things under? Because once you open that, you have an open space.
Right. Yeah. No. I that was a concern. Definitely. Yeah. It's a good point. One. I mean, I think that's one thing that we are. You can open it up, but then you're the air or the droplets are coming through anyway. I think that what we've looked at is pairing that with a secondary shield that also has see through. I know Joel, I guess, really is the one who devised this solution. So maybe I'll let him kind of hit that more directly. But a lot of the goals and a lot of the types of um, I guess screening, which we call, were really insufficient, and were less than really what we were looking for, I'd say. Joel, do you want to maybe add to what some of your investigation found?
Yeah, so my investigation involved standing behind lots of windows and trying to talk through them. And that's the hardest thing with any of this stuff. So when you create a full barrier, you're creating a wall with windows. So it's like trying to talk to someone from inside your house to outside your house. So the idea with the sliding windows is that rather than having a slot underneath and trying to figure out some sort of like vent hole that you could speak through or a microphone or anything like that, is that the units that we're talking about putting in would be like sliding units that would have an area for a screen. So where the screen would be that's where the piece of plexiglass or Lexan, whatever, would be, and that would come up, you know, higher than someone's face, but it wouldn't be complete. You'd have the area where you could still speak out of from above, and then you could pass stuff. There'd be a slot where you could pass stuff back and forth. But that way when you know, when we're not in the middle of something like this, you could still open and close it, or you could put that thing in. But it seemed to be the best way to create total protection in the office and keep it able to function.
So that's gonna be
But
plexi
this,
spots. If we had to cut another hole, we could.
Yeah, so we could cut a hole and
Voice
put
can carry through. So
like a vent thing or something in there. We could do anything we wanted to that, and that could stay in there, and then that could be cleaned. But a lot of the guards that people are putting up only come up so high, and it just seemed like that didn't really protect everyone in the office. So having something that was completely shut off and then could be opened, and then only a small area is being used.
Right.
So
just to clarify here,
Yeah.
just
Wanda?
to
it
recap.
just, I can't envision what it would look like. It just seems like overkill to me. I mean, banks have, you know, have the glass that covers where your face is, but it's open at the top, it's open at the bottom. You talk through it. It just seems like a sliding window, which only half of it can open, when it's already a kind of a small space, just doesn't. But I wasn't part of the input of trying to do this, so I just don't understand what you're trying to.
I talked to 3 different glass companies trying to find a something that I could get like what you see in banks, and none of the places had anything. I mean, everyone's solution was we can give you some Lexan, you can cut some holes in it and screw it to 2x4s. And what we were trying to do was create something more permanent that could stay up, and then if you know, things get better, you can open stuff up and have it be more open, and then if you need to close it down, you can close it down. So that was the idea.
There's also the discussion that, at least in terms of cost, there's the safety aspect, but there's also the cost aspect. Going with full glass, you have to use tempered glass, and it gets very, very expensive very quickly. especially if you need any kind of cut, hole, you know, if you need something, some way to mount it. I do a lot of glass doors, and in talking to my glass company, if it's custom cut tempered glass, it's expensive.
But what do these sliding glass windows have in them? Isn't that
So-
glass?
Yes, it is glass. However, the ironic part about it is that this is the middle ground. Using these sliding glass, these sliding windows with plexiglass in place of a screen, that's actually less expensive than doing full tempered glass, and it's better protection than just slapping some Lexan up with some 2x4s. It's the middle ground option that we could come up with. The windows themselves are not very expensive, and it could be made. The modification could be made to look like, you know, the wall was already there. Instead of something that, you know, we've all seen places that have, you know, been doing some sort
So
of
is both sides of it gonna slide, or just half of it?
just half of it.
Both sides could slide, but only half of it would need to, because you can only open one at a time. So it would be where the
So
workstation.
that's not gonna leave, I guess my point is, that's not gonna leave very much room.
Well, it's a little deceptive actually, because the sliding windows themselves are 4 foot 6 inches wide.
So it gives her 2 foot space.
Yeah,
They're very wide. So, you know, when you open it all the way up, you've got, you know, 2 foot, a little more than 2 feet of space.
Okay, it sounds like you guys, I don't know. I can't envision it, I guess, so.
Yes, I think as long as we got 2 feet there, Wanda, for an opening, I think that'd be fine. That's what.
Well, I was just thinking of what's there now in front of the girls, and that's not 2 feet. So if you took half of that, you know what I mean? That doesn't, so the areas that are gonna be open are gonna be wider than what's there now. Right now, there is none.
Yeah.
Right now, there is none.
There's nothing there today. It's open counter.
yeah, it's open.
This is
counter.
gonna be
Gotcha.
more centered than what you display right then, because we've got to have the room up on top for other stuff on the girls' side.
The other thing I'd add is the 6 foot, trying to maintain the 6 foot distances was another piece that was important for me, at least. So as it is we remember we modified the counter a little bit. So of course, before all this, we put effectively the 2 monitors and the 2 computers together. So if you're looking at the image, the rightmost of the one to the left and the one to the right, so they're both next to each other, and then the what's kind of in the middle there, the sheetrock in the middle, is roughly where the printer is as it sits right now. So we have some difficulties in terms of using the space on the other side, but at least in terms of the customers, we'd be able to put one-on-one in basically to the wall, which is where they are working now, and then the other customer would be almost to the edge of that counter, right to the edge of where the handicap accessible desk is as well. So in terms of the 6 foot window that we're trying to maintain at all times, it seems that we can at least satisfy that. On the inside, there's some challenges we're going to work through, but that at least we can keep the customers separate, which is a huge plus.
Okay,
And that, I like the design you guys came up with. That's better than what we were talking about last week, Joe.
Yeah. No, I mean so the whole point is that, so you have an area for Jim to be able to be separate from everyone as well, and then that would also double as a conference room. So if someone came in and needed to talk to John or needed to talk to someone else, or there was something that would be discussed, it'd be discussed in there rather than people going all through the office, because that's what we're trying to limit. And yeah, I talked to Peter at Viking Lumber today, and just did some preliminary stuff on what we could get for window sizes and stuff, and it's pretty wide open. And you go up in glass size, and it doesn't really change the price. So so yeah, there, you know, and it's just it's an economical window. It's a Matthews Brother vinyl window that would have double pane glass, but it wouldn't be low E or anything like that. It would just be a very simple thing. It's the same thing I have. I have the same windows on my so.
So the other thing that this does is accomplish some of the things we've been talking about for quite literally years now, which is, you know, some oddities that exist in the current town office. Having to walk through the bathroom in order to get to the meeting hall. We'd remove the door, and there would no longer be a publicly accessible bathroom at the town hall. I think these are the times we live in now. I don't see that anyone's going to want to be sharing that bathroom with the public in general. The other part of it is the modifications to the vault by removing the current vault door and getting a new door that swings out into the main deputy clerk area. We gain a lot of extra room in the vault for shelving, which we're sorely in need of, rather desperately. And it also makes it so that, again, it's more conveniently located for the clerks instead of having to go into a meeting room or what will now be the town manager's office to access the vault. The clerks can get to it from their work area, which is how it should be. So by moving some doors around, adding some doors to some doorways that for whatever reason never got a door, don't know why, things are separated a little bit more. And like John said, I don't know the word that you used, but it seemed to make sense. The other thing that we've done here is we've separated the staff entrance, employee entrance will be from the side where, you know, you currently come in from Main Street, and the main entrance, the public entrance, will be from Pump Street. Again, attempting to kind of keep the mix of public and private spaces to a minimum as much as possible. So
I only have one question on the vault door. Can it open into that? Would that be classified as a hallway where our secondary egress is out that way? And that swing into that room?
By swinging out, we can put the shelving where we need to.
No, I get that. But
Yeah.
as far as code goes, can that door actually swing into that open area like that outward? You know what I mean?
oh,
I'll have to run that by Ken just to make sure, because that could be classified as a hallway because the secondary exit for the building is that way. So just run it by Ken just to make sure we're good.
Good.
We probably are, but I know I've run that situation. So
It could swing the other way.
I mean, swinging into that room might be against code.
mhm.
Either left or right, probably wouldn't matter. Because that's an egress. Just run it by Ken real quick. It's probably
Yeah.
fine, but
So one thing I think, we talked a little bit about some of the challenges, not just with this section of the building, but the Taniscott building as well. These modifications, I think that they do help in terms of how we use the space. I think they're an improvement over what we have now in a non-COVID world, a post-COVID world. I mean, I think this is the type of investment in the building I think is a good use of town funds. But I also want to, play not devil's advocate, but I want to just maybe be the person who says this doesn't really change dramatically, add enough space. It doesn't create a vault that's 3 times the size. It's going to, set ourselves up for a long-term situation here. This really manages a problem that we're dealing with at the present. It allows us to work with what we have at the present, but it doesn't necessarily build towards, a future. It doesn't create something that's grander or anything other than simply manage what we have now in a better way than we've been doing it. And so, I don't think we're talking about something that's going to, it's not like this is some sort of addition that, it creates all these offices, and that's not the case. It's really much more of a reconfiguration, like as I think maybe Ben said, we're adding some doors, moving some doors, cutting some holes, putting some windows up, but we're really just moving around the same space. And so the issues with the vault, it does buy us some space, but it's basically one cabinet worth. and so that's, there's going to be limitations on that in terms of the extent that this space broadly, the four walls, the exterior walls, can house what's going on inside that building.
So guys, speaking of, because I know what Brian's talking about, we deal with the fire marshal all the time. It's so much fun. They pick us apart all the time. But what's the space between the vault and what's John's office now, but will be the town's clerk's office? Is a little space there. Is that just a closet, or?
It's a networking closet.
And
It's a
storage.
networking closet. Okay, so that's not like you could put a door in there, because that's got full of networking stuff.
That's a bigger renovation. What the
No,
goal
that's
was to
okay.
try
It just
and-
on here it
Yeah.
doesn't say what it is, and I don't know what it is. So
it's a closet.
We don't know what it is either, Wanda. It's a mess in there, to
Yeah.
be truthful. It's
okay.
I think,
Yeah, I've seen a few of those
ideally,
closets.
Mhm.
yeah,
That-
exactly.
that-
Where you put everything.
That door-
Who's
I
talking
think
here?
it's where you put everything when the company comes over and you don't want them to know. That's what that closet is. It's a scary place in there. As somebody who doesn't have, well, I can swing a hammer. I really wouldn't trust anybody to hire me to do anything with it, unless it's demo maybe. That space, initially, my thought was, well, that will be the door for the vault, and then you come through there. Unfortunately, to do that then means we have to reinforce, that all the walls around that space. So the amount that we gain in space and vault space, really, when you weigh the pros and cons of it, I don't think it comes out in the town's favor. It means we have to, move some shelving, and so actually it's possible. And there's a number of different ways to look at it, but I think we're actually, by not using that space, we're actually going to gain more space, so long as we can deal with this egress issue. If we can keep that door swinging out into the open area, that buys us probably the most space out of any solution. But that's not my favorite space in the office, that closet.
No, that's okay. On there it didn't say what it was, so I just didn't know what it was. So
The networking
So-
door already swings out into that space. So, I mean, that would be the same difference. With the egress thing, right?
Well, that one's set in a little bit in that cubby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's, I don't know, that's classified, I don't know, it's classified as a closet. Where this one's more, I don't know. Just run it by Ken,
So
so it's probably fine. I just don't want to get bit later.
Yeah.
If somebody walking in and sees that.
I did get an. Sorry, Brian.
No,
We're having this crosstalk. I'm sorry, buddy. I just got an email from a local architect who has informed me that the vault door is okay. It's not a corridor, but he would swing it the other way.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So the beauty of live stream, we're out there. So
Perfect.
thank you, unnamed local architect.
All right.
So at the moment, I think what everyone, like John said, has sort of put some input into this. It's the best balance we have between the minimal amount of work I think we all feel we need to do to accomplish the goals of safety and reorganizing the office around that, and also just a better utilization of the space in general, which does go back several years in conversation. But then the two things that we have left is that if we say, okay, let's go forward with this or something very similar to this, who are we going to find to do the work? Has been a topic of big debate. Everyone is very, very busy, and we need it started last week. And then John's absolutely right. Just as an example, and for those who don't know, we can't store all of the election materials in the actual town office because there isn't room. So we have equipment, we have machines, we have ballot boxes, we have file folders, we have like a whole bunch of stuff that goes, a lot of equipment that actually goes into elections, and we share that closet. We had to create a shared closet at the fire station in order just to have some place to store that equipment, because we don't have room at the town office. So John's point shouldn't be lost in all of this. This is a Band-Aid, but it's the smallest Band-Aid we can put on this right now. But I don't know that it'd be more than a 5-year fix, and we need to start thinking about a more permanent solution to the town office. And what that involves, I'm not going to say because I'm not going to be around. It'll be someone else's problem. So, do we have anything else to talk about I guess the proposal? It's not really a proposal. We don't have a proposal necessarily, but in general, if we decide we want to move forward with this or something very close to this, we need to take some form of action to enable the town administrator to start looking for somebody to do the work, and put a price on it, and
So we don't have any idea what it's going to cost at this point.
Well, Joel's been working on some rough numbers. Do you want to talk about that, Joel?
I can. So I put together a basic materials list for everything involved with the windows, the lumber, the trim, the sheetrock, all the kind of stuff that we'd be getting into. And that's sort of in the realm of 7,000, 7,500, 8,000, something like that, for all that stuff. And then labor, labor would probably be at least another 12 on top of that anyway, for all that stuff. So in the 20-ish for the whole thing is what I was sort of ballparking it at.
Okay.
What do we have at capital account, John?
We have 30 in there.
30.
So we in a reserve account that we already have the funds to do this part of the project. I think we should move on at this point and talk about the other two parts of this project that are going to be important as well. Item 4.1B, in order to make all of this work, two things that need to address, and Brian's been working on this, is an overhaul of the town network system and phone system in order to, bring us into the current century. Go ahead, Brian.
Oh, yes, this would be virtually replacing everything we have. We just put a new firewall in that my guy donated from a company for us. We got that working just as COVID set in, made us so we could do remote access and everything. But on that, it took us it took me longer working with our current vendor to get voicemail to email work than it took to do anything else we've done so far. So the current phone system is kind of antiquated, has some issues. It's a system I used to work on, and I was having major issues trying to make it work. So, I think it's time to replace it. It's well over 10 years old. It's probably 13. Typically phone systems last about 10. So So what I put in a proposal after John and I have talked is a new phone system, a new network switch, because the ones we have now are ones I've just brought in that were probably also already 12 years old that were used before that I brought in. It was better than what we had. And this actually also would be 10 new phones with it. There would be 7 for the town office, 3 for the fire department. And there's also another firewall in this that we put in the fire station, so that we can actually build a connection between both buildings, and the fire department become part of the town office now, as far as the phone system goes and the network. So with that, I threw a proposal in. I know we've got $8,500 in the budget in a capital reserve account right now. This came up to 80, pretty much every penny, 84, 88, 97, but that's pretty much all equipment cost. And I'm going to do all the work just so we can get this done. It's been needed to be done. So I did have a conversation with the fire chief. He agrees, but I talked to him for about an hour today. We talked about this and he is on board with it. So, and the other thing I've been doing, which I don't know if John, you put in the packet or not, I've been talking to Spectrum and Tidewater about the internet connection in our phone lines. We currently pay for our 3 phone lines today. It's almost $250 a month. That includes some long distance. Spectrum was $234 a month for 2 internet connections and 3 phone lines. And Tidewater is at $224. I had them up the phone lines to 4 after talking to Clayton. That's 2 internet connections, 1 in each location, plus the 4 phone lines, plus the static IPs so that we can build direct connections between both locations. At $224.82 would be our monthly cost, which is probably, after taxes are put in, exactly what we're paying today, about $250 a month. So we have no added operational cost to do this, which is nice. We're getting a lot more. Current internet is free from Spectrum. It's about 7 meg connections. We haven't seen any major problems with it yet, but I'm sure as we do more and more online, it's going to go that way. What was there also? There was $150 setup fees from Tidewater to put the new fiber into both buildings, put the static IPs on. Which I would recommend out of the 2 that we go with Tidewater, just because I know our phone lines will always work, and our internet connection will probably be there 99% of the time. Versus Spectrum, their phone lines are still power. If we lose power anywhere in town, we lose our phone lines, as well as their internet connections. So, which is always a concern. Can't have the fire department go out because we lose power.
Yep.
So, is that clear as mud?
No, that's great. Thank you very much. So the Tidewater option, just to clarify, was 2 fiber drops, 1 to the fire station, 1 to the town office. Are those, what was the bandwidth on that? 50?
100 by 20.
100 by 20, good enough. So
we could drop down to 50s. We'd save a little bit, but I don't think it's worth what we're saving to do it. So
it's 100 by 20 is way more than we need anyway. So that works.
It is.
So that kind of ties in. Thank you very much, Brian. That ties into before we just sort of open it up here, that ties in real well to 4.1C, which is the community room renovation. The second part of remodeling the town office would be to move, with the support of a new network and a new phone system that's integrated between the 2 locations, move all of town meetings, board meetings and committee meetings to the community room. So the Board of Selectmen meetings would be held in the community room, as well as planning board, design review, any other committee meetings. And we'd schedule all of that around, of course, the needs of the fire department, using that room for training. So it'd get a lot of heavy use for the town side. The unfortunate side effect there would be that we'd have to close the use of that space for general public events because we'd pretty much be having meetings in there just to support town functions, mostly every night of the week. That's kind of the general plan. And in terms of that physical space, it needs a little bit of work, a little bit of attention. We're not talking about building walls or anything, but the flooring is in very hard shape. It's seen better days. So there's a question of if we're going to move into that space for meetings, should we redo the flooring before we do that? I need to get over there and look at it and see if I can provide a number for that part of the, and I just haven't had time to get over there to do that yet. But just trying to round out the whole project in terms of how much it's going to cost to do sort of all three things. That's sort of what we're looking at right now. So any discussion about any three pieces of the puzzle? Joel.
One other thing to go along with that was the need for buying some furniture for that room as well, so that we could, again, so that when we meet again in person, we can each have our own sort of workstation and spread out a little bit more, so that we're not just tight together the way we have been. So we sort of laid out, I went over there, I was looking at town office stuff, and Brian was looking at phone stuff, and John was in the office, and we all went over there and looked at we sort of played around with layouts, and we found some interesting layouts that kind of worked for spacing everyone out. So that's just one other piece to that too.
Yeah, just to maybe jump on to that, I want to, I haven't had a chance to really talk to Clayton about, some of those pieces, the other, and what we need, what the fire station needs, what the fire department needs. There's other groups that meet in there. There's, the county fire chiefs, the EMA has the space. So there's a lot of needs for that space as well. Prior to this, prior to social distancing and all this, the meeting room had a max capacity of 49 people. Using the square footage of that, it's about 26 people. So we can allow for a typical meeting. We could plan for a usual meeting of this group, of the Board of Selectmen, of the Planning Board. Those are normal size spaces. I'd say probably also many of those county groups that are using the space, obviously trying to get the right amount of spacing and masks where needed and so forth. That's obviously a doable piece. The other thing we'll have to talk about is the cleaning of that space. I don't want to make it too confusing right now to add more things in terms of how we're using it, but that's an added burden. I assume every group that's meeting in there, we're going to need to clean it down, all the flat surfaces. There's a lot that would probably have to go into that. So, we'll need better protocols for that. I probably Wanda, you have a lot of experience who can help me in trying to write something up in terms of how to have all people who are using that space be smart about it. Because truthfully, there's things we're gonna have to think about we've never had to think about before. But even on top of that, the flooring's in bad shape and it needs work. There's some trim work that was put up that we haven't painted yet. So there's just some regular maintenance. The building's just shy of 20 years old, and so it's time to put some TLC. We've done in fits and starts on that. And we do have about $7,000 left over from the roofing project that we've carried forward that we could apply towards this as well. So this is, when it rains, this is why you go into those rainy day funds. And so thank goodness we've put reserves aside as we've been going through through these last few years. We have revenues, reserves that we can draw from to, allow us to do these things without hitting all of the core functions of how the town government works. So that's a credit to the town and having and the board for having that foresight to understand the value of putting money aside. So we're in a good position to deal with these things, or at least as good as you can, given what we're all dealing with.
All right. Anyone else have anything else to say about the projects in general? I think what we should do is probably just sort of take a general vote to move forward or not on the project, and empower the town administrator to keep the ball rolling, get more solid pricing, and see if we can find anybody. And again, I think this is something that we should probably come back and discuss in 7 days, because we got to get on it.
Sounds good. I'll move that we move forward on these projects.
I think that pretty much covers it. Do we don't have to say any dollar amounts right now, but at least if we have a vote that we're going to move forward, then that's good. Do we have a second on the motion?
Yeah, I think we need to make that a little clearer though. Move forward is pretty vague.
How would you like to amend it?
Oh, I don't know, because we need to get pricing, right? We're gonna split this to 3 different projects. We need pricing for the town office, right? Next step. We need pricing for the community center and the furniture, or community room, I should say. You call it center, right? So that's 2 things either John or Joel need to work on. Right?
And it sounds like we have the money in the reserve to do most of that work, so.
Yeah.
It's not like we have to come up and find the money, so. So it sounds like we got to get prices, because we're gonna want to open up, at some point, they're gonna open us up again, and we need to be somewhat ready, I think.
So I wonder if maybe maybe the motion should be to authorize our town manager to spend up to the dollar amounts in those reserve accounts to get these projects going, so that we don't have to come back and deal with this again in 7 days. It gives John the right just to get moving forward and get prices and get things done. We're going to try to open June 1st. We got to get stuff done.
So
We
one
can't
thing
wait until the 18th.
One thing that I'll just add to this is that this time of year, and especially right now, it's super hard to find people. I've been beating the bushes. I've been calling around, and people's schedules are, I mean, we can talk about price, I think we just need to be very clear that we're doing these projects so that whoever we talk to, we get them to do it. So that's kind of where we're at. If we're gonna talk about opening June 1st, I think the earliest we could really open at this point, doing even a portion of these projects, would be the middle of June, and that would be, again, lucky. But these, they aren't super, they're not huge projects, but everything takes time, and they're fussy and tricky, and
Right.
a lot of coordination on John's part. He's got to coordinate all this stuff. So
in terms of,
Go ahead,
Sorry.
John. Go
can I
ahead.
just jump in? Yeah. So in terms of the reopening piece of this, certainly that I think that at least for the town office, a lot of this, there's somewhat one kind of stackers on top of the other. So we can do the windows, we can handle the counter, we can put up a wall, but when you get somebody in there, the other piece of this is that one project, to get one person, they have to do almost all of it to make sure everything kind of fits. So we may not be able to have everything done when we want to have it done in terms of hiring and someone's work schedule. Like, I certainly understand that. But the other piece of this is that it would seem that I don't think we're going to be able to phase the town office project, for example. I think we're going to have to go in and try to get as much done as quickly as humanly possible. Because if they do go to a 50-person cap in terms of meetings in June, which is where things seem to be heading, and reopening state government, because that's the other piece of this, is that the availability of state government to open and requiring having people have to register their cars and all that, that's going to put that pressure back on us to reopen. So the pressure outside of what we want to accomplish is going to, it will build in June for sure. So the sooner we can get this accomplished, the sooner that hopefully we'll have someone able to do all of this work for as long as it takes, and be able to open as soon as we humanly can. I hear what Joel's saying. I mean, I still want to try to shoot for as soon as humanly possible, but we're in a spot now, I think, where we're going to be scrambling. We have 2 weeks at this point, to just about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks to get open before a June 1st, and that's a pretty quick timetable. So even in municipal government, that's a quick timetable. So I don't know about the building world. If that may be, I may be just I have to have a lot of doe-eyed looks at builders and hope they'll come in and work for us. But it's important to get the right people, and it's a tough job. So it looks simple on paper, but we want to make sure we have a good quality project that the residents and the citizens can be proud of, so it stands up for some time. So
I don't know, unless we call an emergency meeting sometime midweek. We're talking about this in a week.
Yeah, I said we put it in the town manager's hands. Just we've got our budgets. We know what he does. He's going to do a good job. He's going to lock us the best deal he can and get the stuff moving forward. So.
All right. Well, I guess I would add one piece to this sort of puzzle, because if that's the motion that's being put forth, there's a possibility that the only way to accomplish that is by having sitting selectmen do some of the work.
Right.
I have made a bunch of calls to people, and Joel has made a bunch of calls to people, and I'm not kidding. Everyone's busy. And I'm not saying I'm not busy. I'm not saying Joel's not busy. But if the option is we have no one and can't open the town office, or Joel and I have to rearrange our schedules to do this work, if that's the only way to get it done, part and parcel with this motion has to be some vote, which we can't even do right now because Joel and I would have to recuse ourselves from the vote in order to avoid a conflict of interest. Does everyone follow me?
Mm-hmm.
So let's just play out. Let's say the flooring needs to be redone in the community room, and we can't find a flooring contractor to do it. And I am a flooring contractor, and I can rearrange my schedule to make it happen because I'll work nights. I can't vote to expend that money because that's a direct conflict of interest. I can't vote to pay myself money.
Right.
Okay. But if that's the only way it's going to get done is if I do the work, then we need 3 other selectmen here so that I can recuse myself from that vote, assuming the other 3 vote to enable me to do the work, if that's the only way to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not making a plug for more work. I don't want the work. Let me be very clear about this. I'm not trying to take the town for any money because I don't have time to do the work, but I will make time to do the work if that's the only way to get it done. But it's a sticky, sticky wicket.
It is.
If we're gonna have to do this stuff ourselves, I'm available nights. I can go in, I can swing a hammer, run a screw gun. I'm not doing any finish work though.
You and me both, Brian.
And I know the whole thing needs to be got done, but really the counter work definitely has to be done before it can be opened. And there's no sense to, do it halfway or do something different and then have to tear that down and do it again. So, I mean, I don't know. Can somebody just get that piece of it done? I don't know.
I can't even find anybody to do that. I mean, literally I call, this is the conversation. Hey, so-and-so, how's it going? Oh man, I'm so busy. Do you think you might have some time to squeeze in a small renovation at the town office? And they say, yeah, next year. That's the conversation every time.
Yep.
I've asked everyone I can think of.
Yeah, it's tricky, and just finding anyone on short notice like this is that's the real bug. I mean, it's carpenter. You know, the lumber yards are busier now than they've ever been. Right now, they're selling more materials because people are doing projects. People are having projects done. People have been sitting in their houses for 2 months, and they're just like, man, I just got to get this done. But yeah, I mean, my phone's ringing off the hook. So
I don't know, guys. I don't know.
I think.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think this is a difficult situation. Certainly, it's certainly not. None of us want to be in this spot. I've talked a lot with Ben and Joel about this because I know they're in that field, and I've been somewhat looking at them to say, who is this person that's going to do this work? Names and numbers have been floated about for the last 2 weeks, really, as we've been talking about this. First, in preparation prior to the last meeting, where we haven't talked about this in concept, and then as we got closer to what the sketch is that you've seen here tonight. And I know that in every instance, it's, well, what about this person? What about this person? And Michelle's got her husband's uncle. We got that name, and then and it's the same idea. It's, well, you can fit it in, but we got another name. There's all these names, but we seem to keep coming up the same spot. So it's a challenge for the board because the board has to have that transparency of operation. The board has to be able to operate with without conflicts of interest that enrich any one member of the board. I mean, that's what you all have to try to, and I say enrich, but you know what I mean, in terms of taking a job. So that's why it's really incumbent upon, the board to really look and try to make sure that it's put its best foot forward. And sometimes that can't be, what we would want an ideal circumstance where you have a job, you put it out, and you take from who is available, and the qualified individuals who the town should want working in a town office space where valuable documents and records are kept. Money. There's a lot to be concerned with. It's not certainly a job that just anyone could or should do. In terms of respecting the town's investment in that building and all that it contains. So it's an important circumstance for whomever does this job for the town government. And so for those who are not involved, so in terms of the renovation, for Brian, for Wanda, and for Carolyn, and I'm not saying that Joel is doing the work or Ben's doing the work, but I'm just saying at least they're putting numbers together. So really, the rest of you are probably looked at and say, is this the best foot forward that the town of Newcastle can put? Whether they're on the board, they're not on the board, they're whatever that may be. This is what we need to do to get the job done. And so that weighing those the costs for and the benefits of that is really, I think, where we sit. Because I can certainly pick up a phone and call whomever, and glad to do so, to avoid this conflict, because I don't want a conflict. I want there to be transparency and everyone to be aware of who's being hired and the best person's done for the job, and it's for the the best quality work for the cost spent. But we are in unique times, so it's where we are, and unfortunately, it's not going to. I don't think it's going to get better if we were to wait. So, and we can't wait. We got to be, we got to get the work done on the counter at the bare minimum. So, I don't know. I don't have a solution, but the only thing I can say is that if we can make the cost as transparent as possible for all the other members, perhaps anyone who has a warrant has billing on a warrant they're not allowed to sign for, which is obviously an important piece of this. So no one is paid. If the town is paying materials and buying the materials, then it's only a labor rate. Perhaps there's a way to fact check labor rates and ensure that labor rates are industry standard. In terms of transparency, my dad owns a flooring company in Tamriscotta, in Rockport. And so I can pretty easily check to say, yeah, that seems like a good number, or that's not a good number. So there's a way to do that. I don't call Ben because I want Homeport because I want Ben. It's because Homeport is a Newcastle-based business, and it'd be great for Newcastle-based businesses to do the work. So, but that's the framework of that really has to be something that the Board of Selectmen agrees with and gives the board of the town administrator the parameters of which to work within, and maybe to bring something back. But if we can figure out what that would look like, so that way we can bless this and move forward, and try to get this done for as close to a June 1 opening as we can. That'd be the ideal in my mind.
So thank you, John. That's why I brought it up is cards face up, full transparency. I think this is where we're at, and I'd love to hear from Brian and Wanda your thoughts before we move forward with any kind of motion at all, because now is the time to say something, anything, literally.
No, I'm in the same boat as you guys because I'm doing the phone system. If we decide to move that way, so that quote comes from me. But I know none of us are going to do anything that's damages the town or is not transparent to the town for what we do. This is what we all do for a living. So I don't have a real issue if, Ben, you end up doing that floor, because I already know what you're going to do when you do it. Same as we all do all the time. And Joel's probably going to be in the same boat. So I don't have a problem with any of us having to volunteer to do this work, or use our companies to do it. In these times, that's the best we're going to get. So, so I'll back it up, and say, yeah, I think if we become our only choices, then that's what we have to do. Like I said, and whatever you need, I'm willing to go down there at night with you guys and lay flooring or pound some nails, So we used to do everything in this town by volunteerism. So, maybe we got some carpenters out there that might want to help us on a volunteer basis too. It's nights, it's weekends. So.
Wanda, what do you think?
I think, I don't really know. I think it's not where we want to be, obviously, but I think we've kicked the can down the road so long that we may not have a choice. We've been at this for a while now, and here we are 2 weeks from potentially opening. So, and we need to get the town open. We need to get that office open. So it may be what we have to do. It's not ideal.
So I would just say this at the very least. So finding someone to do it is one thing. Getting the materials is another. So these windows have a two week turnaround. So you order them on a Tuesday, you get them on a Tuesday. A lot of the doors and stuff like that, some of them are right on the shelf and they're there. You order them on one day and you get them 2 days later. Some of them are in warehouses far away and need to be brought in. And so I would say, again, just sort of getting the ball rolling with the material order would be like sort of the one thing. So if people were comfortable with that plan, and again, the only materials that would have to be ordered sooner rather than later for whoever did it would be those windows. So there's 3 windows in the front, and then there's a window, some sort of window arrangement in Jim Murphy's office that would need to happen. And Murphy's current office, which would be the new map room. And so just getting those ordered would be important. And so at this point, the soonest I could meet up with Peter over there would be probably next Monday. So I would basically I could get the quote drawn up for the actual materials, and I could send it around. And if no one had any issues with it, we could at least order the windows for the project so that we were capable of doing it.
All right, so let's circle back to the motion. That little technicality. I guess given the most recent conversation, my concern, Brian, was that your motion might be too broad. We didn't get a second, so I'm going to consider that motion dead. Let's craft another motion to move forward on the project in light of the transparency and conflict of interest conversation that we just had. Is there some way we can do that, John? Do you have any ideas?
I think, you know, I'd lean probably as much for probably Wanda and I to probably as the two who really have really no dog in the fight at all. To me, the materials are fairly straightforward and something that can be easily, you know, the cost at Viking are going to be the cost at Viking, whether no matter who buys it. So I don't think, you know, what your cost of tile would be. I mean, I don't think that's a concern. I think maybe the only question and would be labor rate. You know, is there a way to you know, line in on that and just time materials? I don't know if there's a better way to do that, to try to make it as transparent as possible. Unless you think that, you know, unless the overall of a project, a larger project, and this is what we're going to accomplish, that provides enough of that, you know, that transparency that people are looking for. I'm not saying time. I don't know if there's a better way to do it. I'm certainly all ears. But and also at some point, I mean, as Wanda said, we got to get it done. I mean, I'll put it in another word. We got to get it done. So,
yeah, that's fine. And I'm gonna take off my selectman hat for a second here, and I'm just gonna say, like, you know, as someone who is a business owner, and I don't like the idea of, just because I'm involved in the town, being put in the position of feeling like I have to donate all my time and materials to get this project done for free. I don't like that at all, and I don't think any of us should feel required to do that simply to avoid a conflict of interest, even though we're being completely transparent, and B, because we're under pressure to get it done under a time frame. We wouldn't ask that of anybody else. So
that's not what I'm hearing John say, though, Ben.
No, I know. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm saying that. Yeah, I'm saying that and now I'm going to put my selectman hat back on and say that we still got to get the job done.
So,
all right. So reality is, we don't care about the flooring today. The community center flooring can wait, and we could actually go out and get some prices on it, right? From Homeport, from Floor Magic, from whomever, right?
We put a bunch of stuff in there. Is it ever going to get done?
Well, what we're talking about buying is folding tables and some chairs. Yeah, we'll go haul it out. Well, do what we have to do. Town office is the immediate project, because we can't open unless those windows are in. Okay. So I think we need to concentrate on that and worry about the community center later. We can look at furniture and whatnot to get, so we can start having our meetings there. But we don't have to start our meetings June 1 back being live again. We can continue doing this through all of June if we need to. So, so I think let's concentrate on town office, not worry about the community room. And if we can order materials now, I'd say let's get the materials coming. Doesn't matter who the contractor is going to be, they've got to order them. And if Joel said we're 2 weeks out for windows, let's get these things ordered.
So I would just push back a little bit on that, just because. So I've been giving John my sacred list of my best subcontractors for everybody. So I've like for everything, and he's got all these things that I would like to start moving on. So I would like to get, you know, that community room needs a paint job really, really bad.
Mhm.
It needs the trim needs to be painted. It's just bad. I mean, there's holes in the wall. It's pretty awful in there. And so I would like to authorize John to start using Joel's killer Rolodex that he has in his hands to start getting this stuff done. And we can't wait. I mean, it's like, but we've got to start. If someone can do something, it's got to get done. If we keep pushing it down the road, it doesn't get easier. You know, people are booked up. So I just want to start moving on. I want to start moving on all parts of this project, just from John getting these people going, because, like I said, we've got a couple of good options, and the more it rains, the more we can get painters in there to do inside work where no one's living. So
I have no problem with that, Joe. I was just thinking priority wise, town office is number one.
Yeah.
Community center, you know, we've got time to get that done, so we can actually let a contractor line it up on their schedule, right? Versus asking somebody to drop what they're doing and do it today.
yeah, but I'm just
We need to ask somebody, hey, can you drop what you're doing and do this project for us so we can get back into business? You know, so that's kind of where I'm at with it.
yeah, I just want to make sure that if there's something that can be done somewhere, it's getting done. So like if the painting can get done, I think the painting should get done in that space. It's just, there's no reason to wait on it.
Oh, that's fine. If we've got a contractor that, you know, is going to do a good job for a good price and it rains tomorrow, he wants to go in and do it. Let's do it.
Well, I've got John. So John was going to give those guys a couple of calls and meet up with them and just talk it over. But I think, again, this is a situation where the people I've recommended are good quality people. And I think if someone can do it, we should just have them do it. It shouldn't be, I don't want to be trying to get 3 quotes on painting up town office to satisfy whose price is $50 cheaper. I just want to get it done, is my point.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. None of that's going to be huge enough to worry about going out to bid for.
Yeah.
No real reason. That's why I said if we've got some numbers to call. I was thinking flooring. Yeah, that's why I said we've got 2 companies in town, one in town, one across the bridge to do flooring. You know, to be fair, 2 quick prices. Who's got the best price? We move forward. You know? Town office itself is, we got to find a contractor to move, and it's going to be, we're not going to have time to go out and get any bids on it. We're just going to have to find that contractor that's going to do it, move forward, right?
Yeah.
So could we go back
Well-
to could we go back to the idea that I think Wanda raised and I think Brian also parroted, which was the idea of if you use your budgeted numbers as your budget, and if you authorize work within that, then you authorize me to work within that number, then I find whoever that is.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not looking for to enrich or anything. I'm looking out for the best interest of everybody. But we had an issue where I pulled the job back last week because there were some things I wanted to see it discussed by the board first. I think that perhaps that's the way to do this. I'm not looking for at this, and then what we have to do is have enough transparency of, okay, everyone, this is what that's going to cost. So as long as everyone's aware, I'll make, you could authorize me to make the decision of who to hire, but then I'm going to share and everyone's going to see all the warrants and all the invoices so that, you all are keeping, some eye on as well as myself on the costs that are put forward. I think that may be the only way you can move ahead on this is authorize me to do it.
I know, but I still don't think that allows, that's skirting the conflict of interest too close.
What if worst case scenario, you guys have to do the windows and get it done. And then the office work, granted, Kent's in the map room's not in a great place, but that could be moved to the the meeting room for now. You could keep people out of the back area by locking that somehow. And then, try to get it out to bid to do the rest of the work. But the windows, something in the windows have to get done so that we can get reopened. I don't think anybody would see that in the time frame that we have, as long as we were actively, given other options for the rest of the work to other people, because it doesn't sound like you guys are busy. You don't need it anyway. You got plenty of other stuff to do, but the windows have to be done so that we can reopen. And I don't even know if that's possible, but certainly all the work doesn't, if all the work has to be done before we reopen, we're going to be a long time before we get reopened. When you start moving offices and all of that, that takes time.
I kind of see it a little bit different, and from a it's like a project management perspective. If I was a contractor who was talking to like a general contractor about doing this job and they proposed what you just said, I would not be as interested in doing the job like at all. And the reason being that it's going to be infinitely more complicated to try and remodel the office once it's up and running. Right now, where there's no one in there and you could go in, set all your tools up, leave them set up overnight, do the work without having to break down, clean up, everything. It adds up. And I know that sounds like a trivial thing, but it's actually not. You go in, you get it all done. And we're really only talking about building 3 little walls and moving a couple of doors. To have to go in and do that later when the office is up and running, or maybe we talk about closing the office for a couple of days, or requiring the contractor to do the work only on weekends and then be out of there cleaned up on Monday if he's not done.
That project's not going to work like that, though. It has to be done. It has to be done all at once, because all the phases are tied in. I mean, even just to secure the front office, you still have to build at least that wall for Jim's new office. And at that point, it's just the weird thing about this is that the way it's designed to be done on the cheap, not on the cheap, but without adding extra expense. Everything's built below the suspended ceiling, which is kind of tricky. And there's some wiring that needs to be run. And, there's all these different things that you'd have to shut down town office for at least 2 weeks at some point to do the work. So that's the issue.
I hate to do this, guys, but it's 8:30. We got to move on with this agenda. And I'm at a loss for how to proceed. Honestly,
Can we just meet again next Monday and at least John can start calling people. We can start the ball moving on getting the materials. I really, really do not want to do this. It's not, it's the last thing I want to do. I go in all the time and I volunteer my time. I cut in the mail slot. I do the work for the, all the little honey-do list things that you can't hire someone to do. I go in and gladly volunteer, well, begrudgingly sometimes, but volunteer my time and go in and do it. And that's fine. But this is a huge project. I'd love to be able to volunteer it, but if I'm losing money by not working, I can't.
No, you can't volunteer your time for that.
But
nobody's asking you to volunteer your time. I don't.
Well, what I'm saying is I'm still in the hopes of finding that person to do it. I'm not, for that person to do it, we have to at least authorize some way of this. Whoever does it, we have to authorize that this project can move forward so that we can start getting the materials. Because otherwise it's a moot point, because even if we found a contractor, they wouldn't have anything to do. So.
Right. I still think we just give John the authority to do it. He's got his budgeted dollars. Let's just get this stuff moving forward.
all right, I'll take that motion. Someone wants to make it.
All right.
Who made the motion?
I will. I'll make the motion to allow our town manager to move forward with hiring contractors and staying within our allotted reserves to get these projects done.
All right, do we have
And
a
I'll
second?
second it.
Okay, Wanda seconds it. All right. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of that motion, empowering the town manager to get it going? That passes 4-0.
Before we move on, while we're still on this, as far as internet connections and stuff go, if we're gonna do that, and it'd be nice to have this all done by the time we open town office too. If we're gonna go with Tidewater, I've got to let them know because they've got to do work to get fiber in both facilities. So it's probably gonna take them 2 or 3 weeks to get that done.
So that that would still fall within the reserve account that we have, John, right?
Well, I wasn't talking
Yeah.
about the phone system. I was talking about the internet connections and the telephone lines from Tidewater. That falls within our current operational budget for our 3 phone lines today.
All right, well then, let's just have a motion to expend the funds and get the work going.
I'll
Yep.
make that motion.
Joe, was it? Do we have a second?
I can second it. It's not
All
my
right.
problem.
All right. So the motion is to have the town administrator contact or contract with Tidewater Telecoms for a fiber internet connection at the town office and the fire station. That's 2 connections in order to facilitate a shared network in the future. So that's what we're talking about. And we're talking about doing it with funds we've already got in reserves.
We're talking about doing it with our current operational budget.
Current operational budget. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Clear as mud. Any
Perfect.
further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Let's get moving on that. Thank you. All right. This is a complicated meeting. There's so much to talk about. Before we dive into the streetlight conversation, John, I'm going to flip flop and just, we're going to do the vendor application. I don't want that to be lost or get moved. It's a simple one. Did everyone get a chance to review the street vendor application we received?
Not really. I
Oh.
mean, I basically looked at it, but I don't know anything about it, so.
Rizzy, you want to set up that? Milling around, so he's going the same place that,
Here we go.
thank you, I can remember the name of the little trailer was before,
Taco, yes.
taco trailer, yes.
Hold on. I'm sorry, I got to pull it up.
Yeah, I pull up too.
When did that come? Today?
It came in on Friday, and I was when I went in on Saturday, I couldn't find the email, so I didn't include it with the. It was on the same list as my report, so that I couldn't find either file, and so I didn't. When I sent it out, I didn't see it to include it. So you could hold off for if you want to take some more time to look through it. I don't think that. While he's eager to get started, that's if we are going to meet potentially next week or what have you, we could talk about it at that point.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I guess I'd make the motion. We table it until next week. I just remembered, in reviewing it, that we don't have the most current state license on file here. So if we table it for a week, that'll give him a chance to give us the most his most recent state license.
And what does he want to sell?
Dude.
Oh,
I know food, but
Barbecue. He's actually set up at his house now down in Bristol. He's got his trailer. There is a picture of the trailer in there.
He was there for a few weeks last fall.
Was he?
Yep.
Yeah, he was there for Pumpkin Fest. He came in and because we approved him last year to set up for a short time.
so he's the barbecue guy from Bristol?
Correct.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Town smells a lot better with him in there.
Yeah. Always hungry when I go by.
All right. So I apologize. I think I will make the motion. We table this for a week. Do we have a second? Brian seconds. All in favor of tabling it to next week? Thank you. All right, we'll make sure that's on the agenda next week. So go ahead, John. Let's move down to 4.2, LED streetlight conversion project.
Ooh.
Can I bookend you by saying you have 10 minutes or less?
I can describe streetlights in 10 minutes or less. So basically, the long and short of this has been a long drawn out situation. Finally, RFPs went out, I think, in February, came back in late March, and they were opened in early April. We had a group of the administrators of and managers of Damascus, Newcastle, Bristol, county administrator, and then although Wiscasset and Booth Bay took part, they ultimately elected, or they've been basically gone dark, so they haven't responded as to what they wish to do. Somerville was also a participant. Chris Johnson, the chair of their board, was also a participant. Brian, sir, was part of those interviews, as well as a couple other members of the board of selectmen in other communities. So two entities put forward proposals, Affinity and Real Term Energy. Affinity handles a number of, both companies have had a number of projects across the state. Affinity, probably most notably in our area, kind of the Augusta, Waterville area. In Real Term, much more mid-coast. They've really hit most of Knox County and some of the areas down in Portland, South Portland, and so forth. Falmouth as well. So we went through. We had these hour and a half long conversations with both entities. Then Brian and I had some more questions for for Affinity. So the two of us kind of jumped on a call, talked to them, and then subsequent to that, there was another hour-long conversation with Real Term. So we have talked this out. The costs are not too dissimilar between the two, but probably about a $10,000 or 10% difference, 10 to 15% difference between Affinity and Real Term. So it really came down to, I think, the experiences that the communities had with each vendor. And you can look at Affinity's proposal as well. It's on the county website, but I didn't include it because there's so much that you could dig through on this that I really wanted to put forward what I think was the unanimous choice of those who were looking, which was to work with Real Term Energy. That's the proposal that I've included here in the packet. And they were the lower bid, if you want to call it a bid. Effectively, they were looking at a couple different scenarios. There's a group purchase, which I think is probably the way that we're probably headed on this. It sounds like the other two towns, Bristol and Damascus, voted last week to endorse their town administrator or town manager to negotiate with Real Term. So we're the last of the three, if that matters. And the idea at this point is to figure out which one we want to go to and have it start a negotiation. There's still some information we're waiting to get. We don't have a copy of what the cost of purely of the audit. So you may remember when we talked about this last fall, there were a number of stages in this. There's an audit, there's an investment grade audit, and then there's the installation. And so the audit really tells you where everything is, what the wattage is, how it exists, and then you get further down. So what we're trying to figure out is what is the cost for us just to figure out what we have, where it exists, what it consists of. So that way, then we're making decisions about how we're going to augment that. So the cost that they lay out in here, whether or not we're going to have a group or it's going to be individually, just I guess not as a group purchase. There's a couple different scenarios there. Oh, my computer's not. Hold on, gotta scroll. So they're looking at the group purchase where they're looking at $17,320 what we're looking at with smart controls, $21,043. So, you know, either scenario, you're looking at about a 3 to 4 year payback for this through your existing cost for through LED for what you're paying for streetlights as is. That includes purchasing the old streetlights as they are on the pole, junking them effectively, putting the new lights up, and then of course the audit. Now we obviously have the ability once that audit has taken place to we augment. We can add lights, we can move lights, we can increase wattages or color temperature. We can do a lot of different things in terms of once we have that information. So while right now it's 17,000 or 21,000, we will then have the opportunity to decide, well, we want to augment that number. So you don't want to get too in love with what that cost is at this point, because you will be able to have the opportunity to make some decisions as to what the values are for the community. Areas that are dark, maybe we should add lights. Areas that are too lit, maybe we turn lights down or we move them. So this is, while we would sign a contract, this is the final number becomes a moving target, because as you go through, you're going to find a lot more that you learn about the street lighting of your community, and residents along those pathways and those driveways and those roads are going to weigh in probably on what they see, and I'm sure people are going to be talking to all of you about what they feel is needed. We've already talked about Academy Hill. Academy Hill is not part of this, so the lights on Academy Hill are a separate piece of this. That would be an individual conversation that we would have. Brian and I talked extensively with both companies, but specifically to Real Term, there are a number of different options in terms of lighting options, posts. You can even have those with smart controls on them as well. So there's options we can do in terms of timing, when they go on, when they go off. There is some dimming, though they didn't recommend going through a dimmed option. But the smart controls give a lot more opportunity for us to augment the programming of each individual light. So we really thought Real Term put the best effort forward. The experiences that the other communities had was really unparalleled. The project manager is based in Durham, so he's someone who's available and accessible. And I think someone who was involved with them said, he's the reason this worked. So I think we have a good partner in that if we were to work with Real Term. So Brian, was there anything else that I left out in that conversation?
No, you covered all of it. You said we talked to both companies, and I think my personal opinion, Real Term is the better of the two companies for reasons I won't go into. So yeah, I'll just jump right in and make the motion that we have our town manager go into negotiations with Rail Term on the lighting and move this project forward. It's going to be work for us in the long run. And it should stay within our current operational costs throughout the project. So if I forget what the annual dollars we're spending is, 5,000 a year or something like that. When we're done, we should be at the same place of that. And then after year 4, we'll start seeing a return on our money. So.
All right. So Wanda, hold on just a second. We got a motion. Yeah. Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. So any discussion? Wanda, you want to go ahead?
Well, just a couple questions. I was able to watch the interview for this one. I was not able to watch the interview for the other one. For some reason, it wouldn't load up. So, I mean, I was kind of impressed with all the different things it could do. But I guess my question is, how does this affect the Academy Hill project? Do these lights go on the telephone poles like we have now? I mean, we buy out that equipment. So these lights go right on the poles?
Yeah, that's right. So the existing street lights would come down. Even the arm that more often than not, the arm stays. So the only part we're talking about is the actual light itself, the light fixture itself.
Right. Yeah.
So that arm will stay, the fixture will remain. But to your first question, Academy Hill would be a separate conversation. I mean, certainly it would be part of the installation if we so choose to do that. I mean, really what this RFP and the purpose of that was really just to talk about streetlights, not Academy Hill. But what this does allow us to do is it gives us someone who has that knowledge of streetlights and lighting that we really didn't have as part of the road construction project. I mean, as part of it, when Andrew was in and we were talking about the design and this fall and even last summer, he would say, I'm not a lighting guy, I'm not an electrical engineer, and so there's always these road projects. I think that there's a kind of an arm's length distance that these engineers want to be. So we'll have a partner in this to at least understand what our options are, what we could do, what makes sense. It may end up that we want to lump our costs for whatever we're going to do in the borrowing for these lights, but that doesn't need to happen. I mean, this is its own kind of standalone. The streetlights are their own standalone issue. If we did want to lump them in because it made sense, we could do that. I think we need more information. I would say before I'd recommend that.
But I guess my,
Go ahead, Wanda, sorry.
no, I guess my point is we were putting a fair amount of money into lightings for Lincoln Academy. And if we could use existing poles and be able to add like this kind of lighting, wouldn't that make more sense? We haven't started that project yet. Rather than put up different fixtures and I don't know, I'm just asking, it just kind of makes sense. It's kind of timely that, can we do that? Is that an option?
So the only problem with that, because I've had that same thought, Wanda, as we've been slowly working this project for the past year and a half, John. Issue is the bases for the 9 streetlights on Academy Hill have already been ordered. We cannot return them. So either way, we own those bases. We've already spent, I'm not sure what the cost of just the base was, but we've already spent that money on the bases. So maybe if we do those lights, the 9 lights going up from the bridge to the school, maybe what that buys us is the removal of a street light or 2 that's on Academy Hill, where they would no longer be needed if we've got lights inside. And maybe we can balance some cost savings there.
Joel, go ahead.
Yeah, so the lighting plan for the road project takes into account those streetlights. This is based on our existing streetlights. So that those 9 lights are supplemental to those where there were dark spots where you can't get it from the poles.
So
It's a separate issue, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right, and I
one or the other.
I don't want to cut this conversation short, but I think John was very clear in saying that we can have this conversation with them later. We don't have to make these decisions now. They're great questions, but there will be a time dedicated specifically for this, all these questions regarding Lincoln Academy and whether or not we want to do something with real term in regards to the Lincoln Academy project. But I think the motion on the table is to empower the town administrator to negotiate with real term and get in with the other towns to see the cost savings benefit. And to be honest with you, my 2 cents is that what other thing can you put money towards that you get an ROI after 4 years? That's crazy. That's nuts. That's very simple math, in my opinion. It's short money. It's smart money. So, I think we could go back and look at how much we spend on streetlights per year, and it'd kind of make you ill. That's just for the power for them. Mm-hmm. So, any other questions about the motion at the moment? And John, just before I call it, can you just verify that what I just said is correct, that we will be able to have that conversation at a later time with real term?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is really to pick our vendor, and then we'll, really design options that fit our needs, both on the streetlights, but also to talk about what's the right fit for Academy Hill as well.
Okay, great.
We also talked about the fire station too, for lighting that parking lot and whatnot with them. So that option would be in there somewhere too, down the road. So
The possibility for that, I got you. Okay.
possibility to
Okay.
redo the lighting down there.
Okay. Good. I'm happy. If is there any further discussion about the motion? All in favor? 4-0. Go forth. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right, so we got to make a couple of hard decisions here, guys. It's almost 10 of 9. We've been at this for a little bit. We got a lot of big conversations to go. I don't know.
We can push the budget till next Monday. I don't think there's anything, no major changes, right, John?
No, nothing yet.
All
Nothing
right.
yet. We do have to talk about the current year, but I think we can hold off on FY21.
I know you wanted to kind of structure this, John, as talking about potential warrant articles for Charter Commission and zoning code, and then kind of tee that up into a larger conversation about how we're actually the method of voting for town meeting. But I think if we're going to start anywhere and we're going to have any part of this conversation tonight, we should start there, or we push this to next week because we still have to do the deed, the warrants, and then we have the executive sessions, and that's going to be a little while. It's already 10 of 9. So unless you guys feel like you want to meet again on Wednesday to keep this conversation rolling, and then again on Monday, this stuff just takes a lot of time. It just takes a lot of time. So I guess I'm kind of putting a pause on the meeting here and trying to gauge everyone's.
Let's push that whole thing next Monday, and we'll concentrate our whole meeting on Monday on that.
On the budget and town meeting issues.
Yep, because it all kind of one rules the other. So
I'm good with that, John. Are you good with that?
Looks like he's got something pressing he wants to discuss about town meeting.
Oh God, no. Okay, I just remembered.
Yeah.
I just remembered.
Which part?
Okay. I'm going to jump to 5.4, Harriet, just so you can kind of follow along here.
Thank you.
If we don't, in some way, and if you looked at the town manager report, it's one of the last sections, second to last section, I believe, in the town administrator's report this week. You'll see that there's a section about method of town voting, and what it goes to is that under state law, we have to provide 60 days prior to town meeting. We have to authorize the creation of a warrant 60 days prior to town meeting. That would basically be the 26th. Is that right? No, that would be like tomorrow.
20th.
Right.
20th?
Right.
20th. I'm sorry, I got the wrong week.
Next Wednesday, a week from Wednesday.
So the idea is that unless we are to authorize them to do it tonight, we have to meet in an emergency session some other night this week in order to get this ball rolling. They need time to craft some language to present to us for us to authorize. Okay, is everyone following along with the dates and the times? No? Okay, let me back it up again one more time. Our current town meeting is set for July 14th, which is the date the state has set for the primaries. That would be the secret ballot portion of our town meeting. Normally, we have the secret ballot portion on the Tuesday, and then the following Monday, we have the open town meeting where we all get together. And of course, that's a big question mark at the moment. So under state law, 60 days prior to that July 14th date, we have to set the warrant. So what we need to do tonight, essentially, what?
Sort of. But
Sort of.
Go with it. Keep rolling.
I'm going to go with it. I'm going to roll with it. What we have to do right now is talk about authorizing the town clerk in conjunction with the town administrator and the town attorney to do what they do every year and draft the warrant articles so that we can approve them 60 days prior to town meeting. The law is written that way to provide time to create the ballot and then have absentee voting.
Right.
Which is 45 days before the July 14th date. Everybody good?
Mhm.
Okay. So what John is proposing, and I'm going to turn it over to him, but let me try and summarize in a very quick nutshell here, is that if we authorize the town clerk and the town attorney and the town administrator to begin work on crafting the town warrant, even though we don't necessarily know if we're going to have an open town meeting on the 20th, or even how we're going to vote, we've at least fulfilled our obligation under the law to get the ball rolling. Is that correct, John?
Yep, that's right. Now, am I ready? Is it my
Take
time?
it away, Maestro.
Okay, so basically everything Ben said was correct. Where we are right now, if this was any other year, we wouldn't need authorization to do anything because we would normally just do the warrant as we always have. The reason why we need a motion and a vote tonight is that we would need you to ask the clerk to draw up a question, a referendum question for everything that we normally do at town meeting. So it basically prepares us to do a secret ballot version of town meeting. And we would have 2 weeks, basically until your next regular meeting, to put that together, because the folks who print the ballots for us, the ones that are scanned and go through the machine, need those ballots done or ordered by May 27th, which is the day after your next meeting. So the timing is just what it is. So let me talk for a second about why I'm suggesting we go this route. We don't have time to make a decision on any other method of voting. The state is going to dictate to us how they want us to handle their election on July 14th. We may agree with it, we may disagree with it. It may be the best path forward, but under any circumstance, they handle that election. It is their rules, it's not our rules. So our clerks, our volunteers, our residents are going to be involved in an election that are handled by state rules that we have no ability or say over, but we obviously have to operate them. The challenge then, of course, is how do we minimize risk to our staff, our employees, well, I should one of the same, our volunteers and our residents, our voters. Like, how do we protect them? You know, we just talked about how to protect on a day-to-day basis. How do we do that with elections? We don't know what town meeting looks like in July. We don't know if there will be a cap beyond 50 people. We don't know where we'd be able to do it. We don't have a room that would probably handle more than 100 in terms of the physical distancing. The gym is probably the biggest singular space that we would have. I think those are all possibilities. But if for some reason we backslide and there is a spike or whatever, and they tighten things down, the only avenue we're going to have is secret ballot. So I'm suggesting that as a fail-safe, that we move towards a secret ballot. Basically all ballot questions that would normally be on a town meeting warrant would be voted on at the secret ballot by the voters, whether they absentee or what have you. If we do that, then the state rules can apply, and people can absentee and they can vote on the budget. They can vote on, whether or not we accept grants, what the tax due dates are. All those things are regularly part of our town meeting. They be all part of that warrant. I've had some conversations with our town attorney in ways we can perhaps combine some of those articles. So that way there isn't 27 opportunities where you have to check yes or no. We try to combine them where it makes sense. And certainly that's been a conversation point at town meeting for every year I've been there. I think since I've been in Newcastle, we've been trying to combine those. So I think if we can take the next 2 weeks and Peter and Michelle and I can work on that, we could perhaps pare down those 25, 26, 27 articles into, several. I don't want to, 10, 8, 10, 6. I'm not sure that hopefully isn't on 8 pages of ballot, but on maybe 2 or 3 pages, and people can go through it and can vote. This would allow us, by making an action tonight, by saying that you're authorizing us to prepare a ballot, which would have the questions that we would typically handle via our annual town meeting via referendum. That gives us all the authorization we need to start moving forward. It buys you 2 weeks. And then in 2 weeks, if we hear from the governor, the secretary of state, more information about how that election will be handled, then we can make a decision. If we don't get that information, then the 5 of you can try to figure out what the best foot forward is at your meeting at the end of May. At least you'll have satisfied the legal requirement to have ordered the ballot. But that doesn't mean you have to approve the warrant. You'd have to approve the warrant at your next meeting. And at that point, that's when everything is locked in terms of what it has to be and how it has to be voted. So does that, certainly glad to answer all those questions, but that's roughly where we are. The other thing I'd add, a lot of towns are moving towards an all referendum style town meeting. They're not going to try to figure out how to do it with a bullhorn and people in a field or whatever, different, ways that they do it. They try to stay as close to a method of voting that people are familiar with. Even if what they're voting on is a little bit different, at least people are familiar with going to a ballot box and checking, or absentee voting, trying to create those areas of familiarity for the residents so that they aren't concerned about everything being so different. I think we're all trying to get some normalcy, as hard as that is to come by. So that's my pitch, and I hope we can move forward.
Can I just make a couple of very important points about what I said and what you said, just so everyone is perfectly clear with what the proposal currently is? If we move forward with this, the state is most likely going to require an in-person day of vote on July 14th, where the polls will be open for a period of time, and people can go vote and will be required to vote in person if they don't request an absentee ballot prior to that day. John's suggestion is that we also, when they go in on that day to vote in the voting booth at the fire station, they would have a referendum ballot, which would be all of our annual town meeting questions. There would be no subsequent open town meeting. We would not meet the following Monday as a big group like we always do. All the questions that we normally discuss the following Monday would be on paper on a ballot on the 14th, the same day you're voting for the primary. Just so we're perfectly clear about what it is we're talking about.
John, and we can vote to put them all referendum, right? We do not need town vote on that, right?
Say that again, Brian.
I said we can, the Board of Selectmen can vote to make that all referendum. We don't need a town vote to do that, right?
No, you don't. You decide the method of your vote and how your warrant is put together. That's all up to the 5 of you.
We also
So
can determine the date and time.
Mhm.
Sorry, Wanda, go ahead.
So if that's the case, and we do it all on paper, and we have these meetings that the public can't be privy to, I mean, they can watch it, but they can't have input. So how does the residents of Newcastle have input into this budget?
At the ballot box.
The ballot box, yeah.
However, right, I would say there is one piece of this, is that anything that's on a referendum will require a public hearing. So the Board of Selectmen would have to hold a public hearing. And there are other communities that are also similarly holding public hearings via Zoom, or they're finding some method by which they're collecting and recalling, I guess, what those comments are. So, for example, you could open a public hearing, and you could accept information, and then you can read the emails, or you could I guess you could show on screen what the text was that someone shared. I'm not sure. That takes a little bit more. I honestly, that needs a little bit more work, Wanda. I need to do a little bit more work in terms of how that. I know it's possible. I just don't know the format yet in terms of how that would work. And somewhat, I think the five of you can determine the method of that as well.
Yeah, so I actually did have a conversation with the town attorney regarding the legality of public hearings. And it is perfectly legal under Maine law to convene a meeting of the Board of Selectmen or the Planning Board, for example, open a public hearing on a given day. Say we're going to accept comments in form of voicemails, written comments in mail, emails for 2 weeks. Public hearings open for 2 weeks. Reconvene the board or the committee that's holding the public hearing, read out what was collected, close the public hearing. That is perfectly legal.
Sounds like a nightmare.
But at that point, no matter what the public has to say, the ballot's already written and you're not going to change it.
That's right. I mean, the purpose of the public hearing in terms of the way that state law puts it together is that it's the purpose. It's meant to hold the portion of the debate that you have at a town meeting, like an annual town meeting. Everyone has their, whatever, they bring it up, right? And then everyone talks and then everyone votes, right? So the way that the state law put this together is the idea is the public hearing that the Board of Selectmen would hold 2 weeks or 3 weeks before a vote, a referendum, would be the opportunity for the debate, the give and take, the answers, the questions, the whole bit. It closes, and then the idea is that conversation is what would inform, hopefully, the voters as they go into the ballot box. So there's pros and cons to every way. I mean, in some cases, by doing that, maybe there's more time for people to stew on what they've heard, or to refute things that weren't said properly or correctly. But that's the way, at least that's the way state law constructs it, so that there is opportunity for the conversation, but then the vote. It's in 2 stages instead of 1, as we have an open town meeting.
So there would be no amendments to the articles allowed.
Right.
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 Up or down.
So Jefferson actually does this. This is how they do their town meetings every year. And I guess I understand they have for some time now. They do
Waldeboro as well.
Waldeboro as well. Yeah, right. Yeah. They don't have an open, we all get together in one place and discuss and make amendments and stuff. You go vote on the ballot.
But what I do like about it is that we typically have more people show up on the Tuesday vote versus our open town meeting. So we'll actually get more of what the town would like versus 50 people.
But I guess my concern still is that without having public involved now, it really falls to our hands to get it right.
Yeah, sure.
Without input. And I just personally, I have some concerns about some things that we're doing, which I don't know that we'll get to tonight, but if we're going to put up a warrant, then we got to get to it sooner than later, because I have a couple of concerns. And I know we're in uncharted waters. I get that. But we're trying to be, I think one of the reasons I came onto the board, and we've talked about from the day I got on the board, is we're trying to be more transparent. And all this isn't helping. This is just making things pretty tough. It doesn't,
yeah,
it doesn't feel good to me. Just doesn't feel good to me. I mean, I came on to really do what I think is right. And I feel like there's a part of me that can't do that without public input more than we can give them right now.
Well, you know, I'm sorry, Wanda. I'm kind of a little offended because your comments allude or make it seem like we haven't been transparent all along.
Well, I think there's a few things that I feel like, and this is coming from me, just me, but there's one thing that, you know, I look at the road work that we're doing. And last year I said at the town meeting, and I heard the question asked, and it's quoted in the paper, at what point does a project go out to bid? And it was said $100,000. And I look at the North Newcastle project, which is 470. I looked at the West Helmet Road, which is 328. You know, I'm sorry, but there are things that have not been transparent. And I don't want you to take offense to it, but I think that's reality. And I'm not the only one. You know, I mean, I look at that. I sat at that town meeting and I heard that quote. And we do things over 3 years, and that's a wonderful way to do things, except it doesn't tell people what the real cost of that road is. And I think that needs to be said up front, what that road is going to cost. Not what it's going to cost over 3 years. Yeah, we're going to spend 100,000 this year, 100,000 next year, and 100,000 the next year. So if you take offense, I'm sorry, but I'm frustrated. I mean, I look at this and I hear one thing and I see something else.
Nothing we have done has been to hide costs or, you know, defer it over 3 years to hide the true nature of costs. We discuss them in open, and everything is publicly available to anyone that asks, literally.
But
At
if we
any
tell
time.
people, we're putting things out to bid over a certain amount and we don't do it.
We are allowed to change our mind.
Okay,
We have that right.
all right.
And a lot of times when we haven't gone out to bid, it's been a cost savings to us.
Yeah.
Last couple of times that we did go out to bid cost us more money than it should have. You know, so I know moving ahead, and this is getting way off what we're talking about. You know, so maybe we want to come back to this. But you know, what we've been doing, Wanda, we've been upfront with everybody what we're doing. And we're finally gotten to where, after my 10 years on the board, we can spend money on road projects, and roads are not cheap. You know,
Roads are not cheap.
$300,000 to redo a mile of road is probably pretty good price wise. You know, and we cannot let our roads go to the state that the state roads are in. Last meeting you mentioned 215. 215 is horrible. We don't own it, and we can't afford to let our roads go to that. I rode 131 today on my motorcycle, and that road is falling apart. I won't go up that road again on my bike. You know,
Well, I rode the Sheepscot Road today. I've been riding it a lot lately.
Yep.
And to me, that road needs some pavement on it, way more than the Stonebridge Circle Road does. So,
But-
I mean, I think there's
but
options
Sheepscot
that we
Road-
have.
But Sheepscot Road is a state road. We don't own it.
It's a state aid road.
The state aid road. We're responsible
Okay.
for winter maintenance on that road, but the state owns it.
Okay, well, okay, thank
You
you.
know? So believe me, you're right. It does need some work.
And
It needs some major work.
now I understand that you're frustrated, Wanda, and I'm sorry that if, you know, the frustration comes from just not understanding the process, because there's no reason to expect that you would. And when I say that have the authority to change our minds, I'm not being glib. In fact, what I'm trying to say is that at the time that we often take proposals to town meeting, all we've got is a proposal and an idea of what we're going to do. It rarely unfolds that way. More often than not, we ask for permission to spend the money, and we have a thought about how we're going to do it. And then when we start to go and do it, we discover more information that changes the course and the scope of the project, sometimes drastically. And we can't wait a full year to go back to the town every time something like that happens, because nothing would ever get done, which is why we do town meeting the way we do it. Do we have permission to spend this amount of money on this project? If yes, we're going to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Again, not trying to hide anything at all. But yeah, when someone says, are we going to go out to bid? And we say at town meeting, yeah, that's the plan. We're going out to bid. And then we get more information later that changes the plan and we can get it done for less money. You bet we're going to do that. Now, we can't keep everybody in town apprised about every single decision that we make unless they come to our meetings or call and ask us questions. And it is not our responsibility or the town's responsibility to keep everybody up to date on the reasons behind every single decision. It's their responsibility to be involved. So I'm sorry if I'm sounding a little miffed, but this board is the most transparent board around. I'm not going to name names or give examples. But by any measure, we do a very good job in the town of Newcastle. And I'm not tooting my horn. We all do a good job in the town of Newcastle. So I don't like the idea that you're sitting there questioning everything, and you got elected, you're riding in to clean up house and make us transparent because we're all
I'm not. That is not my point. That was not my point.
Certainly was implied.
Well, I've been accused of a lot of things myself, so that was not, if that was the way you perceived it, I apologize, because that was not my intent.
Let's move on.
So yeah,
Let's move on.
Back to our original discussion, to make a motion to allow the town manager, town clerk, and our town attorney to work on a warrant articles.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
I have some concerns about it, and I know that this is what John's going to say, which is, do we include a warrant article about the Charter Commission, and do we include a warrant article about the zoning code in this warrant they're putting together? Which is why you structured the agenda the way you did, correct?
Right. And right. So the issue is that if the 60-day mark coming up, here within a matter of days, this allows you could order the creation of the question tonight, and then you could come back and say in 2 weeks, no, it's a terrible idea. Whoever thought that was a good idea. And you're completely within your rights to do so. So the reason why the agenda was structured that way was allows you to have the conversation, the discussion about each one. And then if you felt so, then, well, now if we're not going to have those conversations, I guess as a placeholder, I might suggest that you do include those questions and then subsequently remove them. Not because I think it's a great idea or a bad idea, but merely as a placeholder to give you the opportunity to make that decision at a time when you have a better sense of what you want to do or not. Just try to make it more complicated for you, really.
There is mud. When should we come back and discuss this? And I'm getting that if we approve this motion now, my big concern is that we as a board shouldn't wait 2 weeks to discuss these things. There's more in this that needs to be discussed than what can just be handled at the meeting 2 weeks, because then it would have to be approved immediately. So yes, we approve this the way that you're suggesting. I think it's a fine suggestion to go with the motion as stated for all the reasons. I'm just concerned that we haven't had adequate time to discuss it. And that to me means it's an emergency meeting this week. It's definitely a meeting on the 18th. And maybe that's even a longer meeting because now we've pushed a bunch of other stuff onto that meeting as well. Anyone have any thoughts?
I'm good if they draft the questions, and then we'll pull them later, because I know where I stand on on the zoning code, what we need to do with that. But, you know, conversation we have now or later. But if we're just talking these few questions, you know, do we want to put the charter commission on? Do we want to put the zoning code on? You know, and we're already discussed method of voting, so.
I guess I just worry that there again, when do we let people know what these things are
Right.
and how are we going to do that?
Right.
Or you just set yourself up to fail, because if they don't know what it
Right.
is and they don't know anything about it, they're not going to vote for it.
Right.
So are we just wasting, are we spinning our wheels because we can't get that information to them
Right.
in a way that we would like them to understand it, so they could make a reasonable vote one way or the other?
Yeah, I completely agree. I
Totally agree.
completely agree. So we can we can modify it. If we say go ahead, we can modify it by our next meeting, correct? So if we say for tonight, go ahead, draft those questions. We're going to pull an emergency meeting. You know, draft the warrant, including those questions. We're going to pull an emergency meeting to discuss them sometime between now and then, and we might pull them off. We might have a brilliant idea about how to accomplish exactly what Wanda's talking about, educating people so that they don't get to the ballot box not knowing what it is they're voting on, which we don't want to have happen. So I'd say for safety's sake, it probably makes sense for at the moment to include them, and we may pull them off later.
Yep.
Yeah.
At least then they're done. Because if we say not to do them now and we decide 2 weeks to do them, then we're too late. So.
Yep.
Any more discussion about this motion? All right, all in favor of the motion? I can't remember it, but just all in favor of the motion. All right, that passes 4-0. So we're gonna pull an emergency meeting at some point, but let's move on to 5.5 quick claim deed for the Lewis Hill property. John, you want to talk about this?
Yeah. So you had given me instructions to have a deed drafted for the sale of that property. Is, as you recall, this is a property that was on the market prior to our accepting it as or acquiring it via foreclosure for uncollected taxes. We've subsequently had conversations with the buyer's agent, the seller's agent, the town attorney's been involved. He has drafted a quit claim deed, and at this point, all that's required is for you to approve the signing of the quit claim deed, and then subsequently we will receive all of the uncollected taxes and the additional fees that you requested as part of your negotiation with the, I guess, the buyer's agent.
This has been one we've been working on for a while.
It is.
Yep.
All right. So let's go ahead and get a motion on the quit claim deed. Do we have a motion to accept? Wanda moves.
I have a motion to accept it.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Brian seconds. All right. Do we have any questions, conversation about this? I think we've kind of beaten it up in the past, and this is just executing what we had talked about prior. All right. So seeing none, we'll go ahead and all in favor of approving the quit claim deed for the Lewis Hill property. That passes 4-0. All right. So 5.6, real quick, is there was an opportunity, I think, earlier in the week to have some road work done, and John really wanted the board to be aware of the work that was being done. And so, he called me and there was a conversation, and I think ultimately, where it came down was this is, I think John would, I'm going to speak for John for a second, and then I'll let him talk. John would feel more comfortable if we just made a motion to authorize the expenditure of the current budget, FY20's budget, capital reserve funds for capital projects to be completed in this year before we get to next year's budget. So that we can just say that, yes, we've seen it. And even though it was approved at town meeting last year, the money was raised and it's been sitting there waiting to be spent. Am I getting this right, John? Are you?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. So I'll provide maybe some more detail. There was an opportunity in the schedule that we could have finished the paving of North Newcastle Road, and Seth had called me and said, "I'm ready to go for tomorrow." And I said that I didn't think that the board had signed off fully on the plan for the remainder of the budget year. As you remember, so we put together the budget. The budget included not just projects that were to be completed after July 1st, but also the North Newcastle paving was part of that. And so as a part of that, I felt as though that the conversation that the board was having regarding the budget and really all capital expenditures was still in process. And you had not at that point in a meeting said, yes, we're going to use the funds that we already have to cover the need that we already acknowledged was passed over last fall that needs to be accomplished. But you didn't yet say that's what you wanted to do. So, at some point, I felt though it was still on the table for the 5 of you to decide how you wish to move forward with those funds. And, a reasonable person could have said, geez, yeah, go right ahead. But quite frankly, there's been a lot of conversation in the community about, Wanda, raised some of those concerns earlier tonight, but certainly there's others that have called me and talked to me about, well, what about this and what about that? And I don't feel personally as the person who has to, somewhat, be the person who runs things in between meetings to go ahead and say, yeah, go right ahead. This is what it is. I felt that it was still something that was on the table and needed the 5 of you to weigh in on before we went ahead and spent, $251,000. Though it was a project that you already had somewhat signed on to, at town meeting and as a group last fall, I felt like it was kind of back on the table, and I just wanted to make sure that this board is in line in terms of what it wants to accomplish, and that's very clear. And I didn't think it was clear at that point in time, which is why I kind of put the brakes on things, and as a result, it didn't get accomplished at the end of last week. It means that there'll be delays in terms of when it's done, and that's regrettable. But I don't personally feel as though I want to have the town office inundated with phone calls about when was this put out to bid and who's doing it. I want to make sure that the board's vision and what their policy of how they want to move forward is what's accomplished here. So someone could, some could say, and some of you could say that I'm being needlessly cautious on this, but I think it's important that the board operates with one voice on this, and I wanted to make sure I knew what that voice was saying. So that's why we're talking about this. There's nothing changed in terms of the money available, the money that the estimated project cost. None of that has changed, but I feel as though I needed authorization from the 5 of you to move forward on that for the remainder of this year. And then, obviously we'll talk about the budget. The budget, for 21 is its own separate deal, but for money we had existing, I wanted to make sure that the 5 of you were, had spoken with one voice.
So this is the, and when you called me and you said, what do we do? I said, I'll back you up. You feel like you need conversation at the board level, that's what we're going to do. But this is part of the work plan project that was on the table for last year. And the money was approved, and I'm happy to reauthorize spending it for the project that we approved it to be spent on.
And this is the paving of the North Newcastle Road, right? So
That's exactly right.
Which, had there been more time last fall, would have got done last fall. Yeah. So
It would have, but you know, as you know, is it going to be should it be put back out? You know, I had a conversation with a resident last week, I think, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. You know, concerned and wanting to do that, to see that work is put out to bid. So, and I know Wanda, you weren't part of that conversation, and things changed, guys. I mean, it's been 6 months since that project ended, and we have a new budget. A lot has changed. You have you could have, the thoughts of the 5 of you could have changed in that time. And so before we spend $250,000 to improve a road that the townspeople felt was important, I wanted to make sure that the 5 people who were signing warrants still agree that that's the concept and the direction that they want to move. So that may slow things up, and I'll take the blame for that. But I think, you know, in terms of transparency, it's important to me that people understand that the Board of Selectmen is making these decisions, and it's you know, in the direction of the people are being heard. So that's
it's also important to recognize that the funds were spent, or the funds were raised, the funds were appropriated, the project plan was approved, and it is fully within the legal authority of the road commissioner to enact that plan and expend that budget. However,
that's right.
He did his due diligence on behalf of the town by consulting with the town attorney, the town administrator, before proceeding to spend the money, just to be sure. Then the town administrator did his due diligence on behalf of the town of Newcastle in asking us to reaffirm what we had already agreed to. So just to be clear, we're being very, very clear. And everybody's done their job perfectly. There's nothing hidden.
Correct. I got one phone call as well, probably the same resident, asking if we're going to put it out to bid, and I told him we had not discussed it. But I'll put my general feeling out there. I think we've got a good crew to do it, and they've got time to do it. I think we just move on with our original plan to have Hager Enterprises as part of our contract we have with them for doing our general road maintenance, to move forward in this project and get it done.
Yeah. I think it's very clear.
Do we have a motion?
I just said it.
I'll second it.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion or anything that needs to be added?
This was a project that should have been done last fall. I mean, it wasn't no fault of Seth's that it didn't get done.
No.
So, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it was actually other reasons it didn't get done. So I think, you know, this needs to get done.
It does.
Yep.
Road's in really bad shape. I rode it the other day.
Oh, it's terrible.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? That passes 4-0. Thank you, John. Okay. We're going to skip down to warrants, fiscal warrants. So we have a town warrant for $31,662.29, and we have a fire warrant. I'm sorry, I got to get to it.
$1,085.97.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion on the warrants?
So moved.
Move.
Do we have any discussion about anything on the warrants? Anybody see anything? All in favor of the warrants? That passes 4-0. Okay, so at the moment we have an executive session scheduled. We have 2 things to discuss: a personnel issue and a real estate issue. So, do we have a motion to go into executive session? We're gonna end this public part of the meeting. Wait a second while John sends us another invite, and we'll join that meeting. So check your email in a second.
So move.
So seconded.
Okay. So goodbye, everyone. Thank you for watching.
All in favor?
Oh yeah, sorry. All in favor of going into executive session? Thank you. That passes 4-0. See you all in a minute.
All right.